Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of our Ansible series. I'm sorry I've been away for a while. I had to attend to a few personal issues, but now I'm back. Now, in our previous lecture, we went through some of the Ansible basic concepts and terms, and in this tutorial, I would like us to focus on Ansible Inventory. Now, from our previous lecture, we saw that an Ansible inventory is a file that specifies hosts or groups of hosts upon which playbooks are executed. And the inventory file exists either in INI or a YAML format file. Now, there are two types of inventories. We have the static inventory. This is a simple text file that contains a list of managed hosts. And these hosts can either be grouped under a host group or simply listed individually line by line, as we shall see later on. Next, we have the dynamic inventory. Now, this is a Python script that is used mostly in cloud environments to add, modify, or decommission servers. And it keeps track of the host's IP addresses alongside other attributes when the servers are restarted. And this would usually be a difficult task to accomplish when using a static inventory. Now, let's see how you can list hosts in an inventory. Now, by default, Ansible creates an inventory file at the hosts file. So this is a file that is usually the default host file that exists when Ansible is installed, all right? And list the hosts or the nodes in that file, you simply run this command, Ansible-inventory, then you use the list flag, all right? Now, it's usually advisable to create a custom inventory file, simplify the process of managing your own hosts and avoid any confusion. And you can easily create such a file and use the -i option to refer to it. So simply run the Ansible-inventory file, or rather command, and then pass the -i option, then followed by the path of the inventory file and then the list option. So now let's get to our Ansible control node and see this in action. So here we are at our Ansible control node. Now let's practice what we've learned in this lecture so far. Now we have seen that to list the managed hosts in your inventory file, in the default inventory file, run the command Ansible-inventory and then --list. Now this is going to list or display all the nodes in the default Ansible inventory file. And as you can see from the output, I have 4 nodes which are listed here, okay? And these nodes have been listed using their IP addresses, as you can see, and they are indicated as ungrouped. And the reason for this is because these nodes are not categorized or grouped under any host group, okay? And just to view the Ansible, just to view the host file, I'm going to run the command, or I'm going to use my text editor to open the file. So this is the path, the default inventory file. And when I open it, at the very end, you can see these are my managed nodes, okay? Right. Now, we also say that you can also create your own custom inventory file, okay? Now here I'm going to create a directory called Ansible. And inside that directory, I'm going to create my inventory file. So I'm going to create the directory and navigate into it. Okay, then I'm going to create my custom inventory file and I'm going to call it my inventory. Like that, okay. Now, once again, I'm going to list my nodes here. So I have my first node, 173.82.255.60. My second node is 173.82.227.89. Then I have 173.235, sorry, .82.235.7. And finally, I have 173.82.235.187. Okay, then I'm going to save the file. Right, so here is my custom inventory file. All right, and to list the nodes in the custom inventory file, I'm going to run the command Ansible -inventory. And this time around, I'm going to pass the -i option followed by the path to my inventory file. Now the inventory file is in the Ansible directory, so I'm simply going to type my inventory file like that. Otherwise, if you are outside the directory that contains the inventory file, you need to specify the absolute path. All right, now to complete the command, I'll type lists like that. Okay, great. So once again, you can see that here we have a similar output like we had before. So here is a list of the managed nodes in my custom inventory file. Now that's great. So let's move on to the next subtopic. See you then. Now let's see how you can organize hosts inside an inventory file. And so far, you may have a clue of how to organize the hosts. Now, there are two ways that you can organize the hosts in an inventory file. So you can organize them as grouped or ungrouped hosts. So ungrouped hosts are managed hosts that are not part of any host group, and these are usually listed line by line using either their IP addresses or host names. And this is what we had earlier in our host file, all right? So we just had hosts using their IP addresses, all right? Now for the grouped hosts, these are managed hosts that belong to specific host groups. So these are categorized into their own specific host groups. And by default, Ansible provides two groups. So we have the all group and the ungrouped group. So the all group refers to all the hosts inside the inventory file, whether they are grouped or not, all right? And the ungrouped group is simply a special group that refers to any hosts that is not defined under any host group, okay? Now, this is what we had in our inventory file. So this is a list of the managed hosts. Now, to organize them in a better way, I'm going to place them under host groups. So for the first two hosts, I'll categorize them as web servers. And for the remaining two, I'm going to categorize them as database servers. So instead of listing them line by line, I'm going to place them under these host groups as shown. Okay. So here we have two host groups. We have the web servers host group and we have the database servers host group. Now we can also have groups of groups. Okay. So here I'm going to have another group called data center, okay, with a suffix called children. Now using the children suffix, you can place these two groups under the data center group as shown. Okay, so this is a better way of organizing your hosts, okay, as you can see. So here we have a total of three groups. We have the first two groups, okay, and then we have the last group, which consists of the first two groups, all right? Now let's move over to our Ansible control node and see this in action. So here we are back again at our Ansible control node. And as we've seen earlier, our inventory file consists of ungrouped hosts, as you can see. So here I'm going to list them using the cat command, which by the way is also another command that you can use to list the nodes in your inventory file. All right. So these are the hosts that we have. Okay. Now, before we proceed any further, I'm going to test the reachability of these nodes. So I'm going to run the command sudo ansible, then -i to target my inventory file, then -m ping all. Okay, so we previously saw that we have two groups. You can by default, so you can either have all, so all targets all the hosts, whether they are grouped or not. Okay, so this command is going to test the reachability of the nodes in my inventory file. So I'm going to press enter. Great, so as you can see, I'm able to reach all my hosts from my Ansible control node. As you can see here, we have 4 nodes, and we can see that we can access them from here. All right. Similarly, you can run the command. Instead of using all, you can also specify ungrouped. Okay. Since you have also seen that this is also one of the default groups that is provided by Ansible. So once again, I'm going to press enter. And once again, you get similar output as we've had before. Okay. Now, I'm going to go right into my inventory file. And instead of having these hosts listed line by line, I am going to categorize them into host groups. Okay. So I'm going to delete all these hosts. And now I'm going to organize the hosts in a much better way using the host groups. Okay, so now the first host group, we have web servers like that. And under web servers, we have the first host is 173.82.255.60, followed by 173.82.27.89. All right. Then for the second host group, we have database servers like that. And under database servers, we have 173.82.235.7. And finally, we have 173.82.235.187. All right. Now, we also mentioned that you can have groups of groups. So here I'm going to have the third group called data center. And this group will have children. So we'll have the children suffix here to indicate that we have two groups under the data center group. And these two groups are the web servers host group and the database servers. Okay, right. Now, as you can see, our hosts file looks more presentable and better organized. So I'm going to save this. Okay. Now we can list the hosts in the inventory file yet again. So I'm going to run the command ansible -inventory -i to specify my inventory file and then list. And this time around, you can see the hosts are listed under their host group. So we have the database servers host group with these hosts, all right? So we have the web servers host group, and these are the corresponding hosts. We also have the data center host group, all right? And you can see under this host group, we have two groups, the database servers and the web servers host group, all right? Okay, now instead of targeting all the hosts, as we've seen before, using the -m ping all command, we can simply target the host groups. Okay, so for example, to target the hosts under the web servers hosts group, I'm going to run the command sudo ansible -i, then followed by my host file -m in web servers. Okay, so now this command will test the reachability or accessibility of the hosts under the web servers host group. So I'm going to provide my password. Wonderful. And you can see from the output, we can see that we have two hosts that are reachable. Okay, so similarly, you can target the database servers host group. Great. You can see that the hosts are also reachable. Okay. And in the same way, we can try and see if we can target the data center. Wonderful. So here, when you target the data center, the output populates all the hosts in our inventory file. And the reason for this is because all the host groups are categorized under the data center. So in essence, this is much similar to passing the all group here at the end instead of passing the data center group. Okay, and that's it. So now let's move on to something else. So moments ago, you have seen how you can organize your hosts using host groups inside an inventory file. And we have seen that this is a much better way of arranging your hosts, and it makes the host file look more presentable. Now, there are cases where you can find one host belonging to more than one host group, as is the case here. So here you can see that this node 173.82.35.187 belonging to two host groups, and these are the database servers and the backup groups, and this is perfectly fine. So in case you ever encounter such a situation, don't worry. Okay, now here is a cheat sheet of how you can target the hosts inside an inventory file, and we have so far seen or looked at the all pattern, which targets all the nodes inside the inventory, whether they are grouped or not. Okay, then we can also target the hosts that belong to a specific host group. Okay, so instead of targeting all the host groups, you can just target all the hosts that belong to a specific host group. Okay, you can also target all the nodes that belong in host groups. Okay, by specifying the host groups separated by a full colon. Okay, you can also target the nodes that appear in both host groups only. Okay, so this is how you do it. All right, Then finally, you can target the nodes that appear only in one host group and not the other. All right. So let's get our hands dirty and have a look at some of these commands. So now let's put into practice what you've just learned from our last slide. So here I am. I have a split screen, as you can see, for better demonstration. So here on the right hand, I'm going to preview my inventory file. So I'll run the command at Ansible my inventory. Okay. So here I have added an additional host group called backup, which has this node here. And you can see that this node also exists in this host group called database servers. Okay. So now we are going to practice getting different hosts in this inventory file. All right. Now I'm going to target all the hosts in the inventory file using the all pattern. So here I'm going to run the command sudo ansible -i, then I'll provide my inventory file like that, then -m ping, then I'm going to use the all pattern, which is going to target all the nodes in this inventory file. All right, so I'll hit enter. And from the output, you can see that I'm able to access all the hosts in the inventory file. So this is the first one here. This is the second one, the third one, and finally we have the fourth host in this inventory file. Okay. So now I would like us to test whether we can access the database, the hosts in the database servers group only, and not the other hosts. So here, instead of using the all pattern, I'm going to provide the database server's host name. Okay, so here I'm going to type database underscore servers. So this is going to target the hosts defined under this group. So when I hit enter, you can see our output now has two hosts, this host and this one, which correspond to the hosts listed under the database servers group. All right. So let's now target hosts in two groups. So here I'm going to target the hosts that appear both in web servers and database servers group. All right. So in the command, I'm going to delete this and I'm going to type the name of the host groups, starting with web servers, full colon, then followed by database underscore servers. So this command is going to target all the hosts in these groups. Okay. Great. So as you can see, we are able to target all the hosts that appear in both these groups, which is essentially all the hosts. Okay. Now let's work with database servers and the backup host groups only. So in this case, you can see for these two groups, they share the same hosts, which is 173.82.255.187. All right. Now, in my playbook command, in my Ansible command, I'm going to list the nodes that appear in both the database servers and the backup group. So to do so, here I'm going to specify the database servers group, okay, followed by a full colon, then a backslash, and the ampersand sign, all right? And then followed by the backup group, like that. And I'll hit enter. Great. So from our output, we can see that these two host groups share one node in common, which is this node here. And we can verify this. So here we have this node, which also appears in this host group, all right? Great. Now, I'm going to list the nodes that appear in the database servers group and not in the backup group, which is this node here, all right? So back to our command. So here, after the full colon, I'm going to type a backslash like that, followed by the exclamation mark, all right? Then the name of the next host group, which is backup. Okay. Great. So here, this host is the host that is in the database servers group, but not in the backup group. Okay. So that's all about targeting patterns. And now let's move on to something else. So another thing you can do in an inventory file is to set up aliases for your managed nodes, okay? Now you can provide aliases to managed hosts in such a way that you can reference them later when running Ansible commands and playbooks. And the way you do that is to specify, or rather to begin with the alias name. So here I've decided to use the alias name called server1, followed by a variable called Ansible host, which points Ansible to the IP address of the node, which is 173.82.255.60, all right? Similarly, you can specify another alias like this, followed by the Ansible host variable, which points the server to the IP address of the node, all right? Now, the benefit of having aliases is that it makes it easier to target individual servers during playbook runtime instead of using an IP address or a host name. So now let's check out how you can do that on an inventory file. So yet again, we are back at our Ansible control node, and currently this is how our inventory file looks like. Now, here I'm going to create aliases for these two nodes here that appear under the web servers group, all right? So to do so, I'm going to modify my inventory file. So here, I'm going to specify an alias. So I'm going to type server1, okay, followed by Ansible host variable equals to, now here, I will point Ansible to the IP address of this node, all right? And similarly, for the second node, I'll type server2 Ansible underscore host is equals to the IP address of the second node, okay? Now I'm going to save this file, all right? Now, let's view it again. Ansible, my inventory. Okay, now here I'm going to try and target any of these servers. All right, so here I'm going to run the command sudo ansible -i, the inventory file, then -m ping. Now I'm going to target this server, or rather this node, using its alias name, which is server1. Great. And you can see the command was successful and we were able to get the node using its alias. Now let's try the second node. So here, instead of server1, we're going to have server2. And yet again, you can see that the command was successful. All right. Now I have a sample playbook file. So this is what we have. All right. So for the hosts, instead of using the all pattern, I'm going to provide the alias. So I'm going to edit the playbook file. So here I'm going to delete all and I'm going to use this alias here. So server1. Okay. So this is a simple playbook file that displays a simple message on the standard output. Okay. So I'm going to save this and we're going to check whether this will work. All right. So I'm going to run the command sudo ansible playbook, then provide the path to the inventory file like that, then the name of the playbook. All right. Great. So you can see the playbook ran successfully. Okay. So here you can see from the play recap, the alias server1 has been used as well as when running the tasks. Okay. Right. So that underscores the importance of using alias. All right. So instead of using or targeting a specific host using the host IP address, using an alias is a better way of doing so. All right. Let's now see how you can set up host variables in inventory files. And from our previous slide, we have already interacted with a host variable which pointed Ansible to the IP address of the managed nodes. So host variables are used to change Ansible's default behavior when connecting and executing commands on managed nodes. These variables can be set per host or per group, and they are also accessible from playbooks. So from a previous example, we had this arrangement under the web servers host group. So here we used the Ansible underscore host variable to point Ansible to the IP address of the node. Similarly, you can also determine the remote user that Ansible will use to run the commands on the remote host. So here I've used the host variable called Ansible underscore user. So this is a host variable that Ansible will use to know the remote host user that will be used to run the commands on the remote system. So you need to ensure that you have this user already created on the target node or the managed host that you wish to control. All right. So now let's go over to our Ansible control node and see this in action. So we are back again at our Ansible control node. Okay. And I've made a few changes to the inventory file. So let's see. So under the web servers host group, I have made a few changes here. So I have added the remote user that Ansible will use to connect to the remote node. So here, for both nodes, I have specified the remote user as James. So in your case, you need to ensure that this user is already configured on your remote node, all right? Now, for this to work, and for all the Ansible commands to work, when specifying the remote user, you need to copy the SSH key file from the Ansible node to the remote user account. Otherwise, the commands will fail. So what do I mean by this? So let me try and access the reachability of this node here. So I'm going to run the command sudo ansible-i. Then I'll specify the inventory file. Sorry, it's my inventory, like that. -m ping. Then I'll specify the alias. So as you can see, this time around, we get an error, okay? So our workaround to this is to now copy the SSH key from the control node to the remote user account. So I'm going to switch the root user like that. Sorry, sudo. So here I'm going to copy the public SSH key. So I'll run the command SSH copy ID James at the remote host IP, which is 173.82.255.60. All right, I'll provide the password. And the key has successfully been added. All right, so I'll now switch to sudo user on the Ansible control node. All right, so now I'm going to test the reachability of this host here. So yet again, I'm going to run the command sudo ansible-i. I'll specify the inventory file, -m ping server1. I'll provide my password. And look here. So here we have successfully tested the reachability of the server and have gotten a positive response, okay? So whenever you're specifying a remote user that Ansible will connect to, always ensure that you copy the public SSH key from the control node to the remote user account, okay? And that's about it. And that marks the end of this lecture on Ansible Inventory. Thank you so much for coming this far. If you found the video beneficial, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so that you'll continue receiving more of these videos. In my next lecture, I'll be switching gears to something different. I'll be covering Ansible modules and how they're used in Ansible. So see you then and stay safe.